Welcome back to the deep dive. It is fantastic to have you with us today.
Yeah, great to be here.
I want you to start by picturing a very specific, almost unbelievable scenario.
Okay.
Imagine you're watching a high-stakes Premier League football match. You're watching an away team walk into one of the most historically intimidating stadiums in world football.
Right.
And against a giant of the game, this away side actually manages to dominate possession.
Which is rare enough on its own.
Exactly. They hold on to the ball more than the home side. They create higher quality scoring chances, statistically speaking. They run further, they cover more ground, and they are, constantly asking incredibly difficult questions of the opposition's defense.
Yeah.
If you're reading that on a piece of paper, it sounds like an absolute recipe for a famous hard-fought victory, right?
Yeah.
Or, at the absolute minimum, a highly respectable draw.
You'd think so. Absolutely.
Well, what if I told you that in this specific scenario, that team, the one that did all of those fundamental things correctly, ended up losing the match by conceding 5 goals?
I mean, it sounds like a total glitch in the matrix.
Right.
It sounds like someone has tampered with the underlying code of how football is actually supposed to function.
Yeah.
But that is exactly what happened, and it's precisely why we're dedicating our entire deep dive today to unpacking it.
Exactly. Our mission today is to completely deconstruct the incredibly bizarre, head-scratching Premier League clash where Liverpool battered West Ham United 5-2 at Anfield. This was on February 28th, 2026.
Yeah.
We're going to figure out how the eye test, the underlying analytical data, and the intensely polarized reactions from the fans tell 3 completely different stories about the exact same 90 minutes of football.
And to do this properly, we've got a really fascinating stack of sources.
We really do. On one side, we have the official BBC Sport match report, complete with all their deep, granular analytics.
So we're talking expected goals, possession metrics, distance covered, shot maps, the whole 9 yards.
Right. But to get the real, unfiltered emotional truth of what this game actually felt like to live through, we are also pulling directly from the raw post-match Reddit threads.
Specifically from both the Liverpool fan base over on Liverpool FC and the West Ham fan base on our Hammers.
Which is such a crucial combination of sources for a match like this.
It really is. Because, for you listening, this isn't just a story about a high-scoring, entertaining game of football.
No.
When you look at the raw data juxtaposed with the brutal reality of the scoreline and the fan reactions, this becomes a profound look into the terrifying gap between performance and results.
Terrifying is the right word.
It's a masterclass in how quickly pure, unadulterated luck can alter the trajectory of a single match, and by extension, the trajectory of a team's entire season.
Yeah.
Whether you're deeply invested in football tactics or you just find human psychology and statistical anomalies fascinating, this is a brilliant case study in how we process chaotic events when the numbers violently refuse to match our eyes.
So where do we even begin with this? Because the core contrast here, the absolute beating heart of this statistical paradox, is the scoreline versus the expected goals.
Yeah, the XG.
This is the anomaly that we need to spend some serious time on. We really need to focus specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric, while West Ham felt their performance deserved more. Focus specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric, while West Ham felt their performance deserved more.
It's the whole story of the match.
Exactly. I want to keep drilling this in. Focus specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric, while West Ham felt their performance deserved more. Liverpool scored 5 goals. 5.
Yeah.
West Ham scored 2. Yet, if we look at the expected goals metric, or XG, it tells a shocking story.
Yeah.
The final XG tally was Liverpool 1.75, West Ham 1.84.
West Ham actually won the XG battle.
They won it. But I need to stop right there. Before we get into the weeds, for anyone who might not live and breathe football analytics, can you properly unpack what a 1.75 XG actually represents when a team has scored 5 times?
Yeah, so what's fascinating here is how violently that metric contradicts the basic premise of a 5-2 thrashing.
Right.
Expected goals, or XG, is a brutally objective metric. It measures the quality and the statistical likelihood of scoring from the chances created in a game.
Okay.
It looks at where the shots were taken from, the angle to the goal, the type of pass that led to it, the defensive pressure in the immediate vicinity, and it assigns a probability to that specific action.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A penalty, for example, is usually around 0.76 SG, meaning it goes in 76% of the time.
Makes sense.
So when a listener hears that a team lost 5-2, the immediate natural assumption is that they were played off the park.
Yeah, you picture tap-ins and one-on-ones with the goalkeeper.
Exactly. You imagine a relentless siege, chance after chance being created from 6 yards out, and the losing team's defense looking like a complete sieve.
Right.
But the cold, hard numbers dictate that West Ham theoretically created better, more probable chances to score than Liverpool did over the course of the entire 90 minutes.
Which is wild.
When Liverpool's XG sits at 1.75, the statistical models are saying that based on the historical conversion rates of thousands and thousands of similar shots, an average Premier League team would have scored maybe 1, perhaps 2 goals from those specific opportunities.
So to score 5 from a 1.75 xg.
It's a massive mathematical outlier.
Yeah.
It implies an extreme level of overperformance, clinical finishing, or, as we will get into, profound luck.
And it doesn't stop with the xg. If we dive deeper into the BBC's match stats, the possession numbers back up the sheer weirdness of this game.
Yeah, they do.
West Ham went to Anfield, which is famously one of the most intimidating, high-pressure fortresses in world football, and they actually edged the possession. They had 51% of the ball to Liverpool's 49%. Now, I want to push back on something we often hear in football media. We always hear that possession doesn't matter if you don't do anything with it.
You hear that all?
But West Ham did do things with it. They outworked Liverpool in terms of sheer distance covered.
Yeah.
West Ham ran 109.68 kilometers as a team compared to Liverpool's 108.7 kilometers.
Great.
They spent more of their movement jogging 56.39% compared to Liverpool's 54.33%. They made more total passes, 418 to Liverpool's 399.
It's crazy when you lay it out like that.
So they had the ball more, they ran more, they passed more, and they had better quality chances. But they still let in 5. How does a team with 49% possession at home manage to be so destructive?
The shot volume is where we start to see the cracks in the anomaly, and it starts to explain the tactical shape of the game.
Okay.
Because while West Ham had the higher quality chances, Liverpool had the sheer brute force volume. Liverpool registered 18 shots total, with 7 on target.
Compared to West Ham's 11.
Right, West Ham had 11 shots, with 4 on target. But here is the critical analytical point for you to keep in mind, and it perfectly highlights how Liverpool's output defied their expected goals.
Yeah.
Liverpool's 18 shots only accumulated to that 1.75 xg. That means Liverpool were taking a massive volume of incredibly low probability shots.
They were just pulling the trigger from anywhere.
They were. They had 5 attempts from outside the box compared to West Ham's 3. In a normal, mathematically sound universe, a team taking a high volume of low probability shots from distance does not score 5 goals.
It's completely unsustainable.
Exactly. What we are seeing here is an incredibly rare statistical event, what statisticians might call a failure to regress to the mean within a single sample size, where a team converts those low percentage chances at a highly unnatural rate.
Wow.
And part of the reason they were taking those shots is likely due to West Ham's defensive posture. Even though West Ham had possession when they lost the ball, they likely dropped into a structure that forced Liverpool to shoot from distance.
Which brings us perfectly to the West Ham fan perspective, because if you think those stats are frustrating to analyze, imagine being a fan actually living through it in the stadium or watching on television.
It must have been infuriating.
Looking at their hammer sled, the sentiment is this potent, toxic mixture of utter disbelief and absolute despair. They know the data and they felt it on the pitch. I want to highlight a quote from user Independent Cost 9076 who summed it up perfectly. They wrote, "I've never seen a scoreline less reflective of the performance."
Spot on.
And they aren't alone. Another user, TP Davis, claimed that West Ham were the better team in open field play minus the deflections, and framed the entire 5-2 loss as a vastly unlucky performance.
All right.
They really felt that a point would have done wonders for them. And honestly, looking at the underlying numbers, if you strip away the scoreboard, they had every right to expect one.
And this is where the human element completely collides with the statistical one. The fans aren't being delusional here. They aren't wearing claret and blue tinted glasses.
No.
They're being highly accurately observant of the underlying performance metrics, even if they aren't consciously quoting XG tables. When Team Davis mentions being better in open play, the raw stats back that assertion up completely.
Do they really?
Yeah. West Ham's XG from open play was 1.15 compared to Liverpool's 1.13. They were marginally the better team when the ball was actually moving in standard tactical phases.
But football isn't played on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. It's played on grass, where a million tiny chaotic variables wind, the slickness of the turf, the chaotic bounce of a ball, and bodies being thrown desperately into the line of fire create total unpredictability.
Right.
Which leads us to the most pressing mechanical question of this entire deep dive. If West Ham had the better XG, more possession, and better open play stats, how on earth did Liverpool physically manage to find the back of the net 5 separate times?
That is the multi-million-pound question. And to answer it, we really have to look at the anatomy of these 5 Liverpool goals.
Let's do it.
Because the timeline of destruction here completely defies that low XG. Let's walk through it minute by minute. It starts incredibly early.
Right.
In the 5th minute, Hugo Ekitike scores, assisted by Ryan Gravenberch. The BBC notes it's a smart finish at the near post.
Okay, 1-0.
Then, in the 24th minute, Virgil van Dijk rises up and headers the ball in from a Dominic Szoboszlai corner.
2-0.
Fast forward to the 43rd minute, just before halftime, Alexis McAllister strikes a superb volley that takes a massive deflection and ends up in the back of the net. That's 3-0 at the break.
Yeah.
Then second half, 70th minute, Cody Gakpo hits an effort that is also heavily deflected, leaving the West Ham keeper, Mads Hermansen, with absolutely no chance.
Right.
Finally, in the 82nd minute, Jeremy Frimpong fires in a cross that Axel Disasi inadvertently turns into his own net for an own goal. 5 goals.
If we pause and look closely at that sequence of events, a massive undeniable pattern emerges, and it perfectly explains our 1.75 XG anomaly.
Okay, lay it out for us.
4 of the 5 Liverpool goals involved some kind of severe deflection or an outright own goal.
4 of the 5.
4 of the 5. This is the crucial context that the raw scoreline hides. When Alexis McAllister strikes a volley from distance in the 43rd minute, or when Cody Gakpo takes a speculative low-percentage shot in the 70th minute, the expected goals model evaluates the shot at the precise microsecond the player's foot strikes the ball.
Okay, I'm with you.
At that exact fraction of a second, the likelihood of that specific shot beating a Premier League goalkeeper from that distance, traveling through a crowded penalty area, is incredibly low. Hence, only a tiny fraction of XG is awarded.
But hold on, doesn't that highlight a massive flaw in how we consume analytics?
What do you mean?
Well, the computer model doesn't know the ball is about to ping off a defender's shin and entirely change direction. So if we rely too heavily on XG to tell the story of a match, aren't we basically ignoring the reality of the physics on the pitch?
You've hit the nail on the head. The model cannot predict the chaos of a deflection. A heavy deflection completely alters the trajectory of the ball. Entirely wrong-foots the goalkeeper who has already committed his body weight to the original flight path and turns a mathematically low probability event into a near-certain goal.
Right.
The XG remains low on the stat sheet, but the scoreboard ticks up in reality. When you have an environment where 4 out of 5 goals rely heavily on defensive touches, deflections, and own goals, you are witnessing an extraordinary statistical deviation fueled by pure, unadulterated luck.
Yeah.
It is the chaos of the sport, manifesting in the most brutal way possible for West Ham's defense. It perfectly encapsulates why we are focusing specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric, while West Ham felt their performance deserved more.
And it wasn't just deflections from open play that killed West Ham. Let's talk about the other major weapon Liverpool utilized here, which ties directly into this theme of maximizing low-probability situations.
Set pieces.
Set pieces. The BBC Match Report highlighted a staggering statistic. All 3 of Liverpool's first half goals came from set pieces, if we are broadly including the immediate chaotic phases following them. Now, I want to dig into this because this isn't just a random occurrence.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the broader tactical narrative of the season, the set-piece evolution is arguably the most important takeaway from Liverpool's campaign under Arne Slot.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. According to the BBC, between the start of the season in August and December 31st, Liverpool were joint bottom of the entire Premier League when it came to goals from set pieces, excluding penalties.
Joint bottom.
They were statistically atrocious at them. They were wasting corners. They were wasting wide free kicks. But since the calendar flipped to 2026, Arne Slot's side now leads the entire Premier League with 8 set-piece goals this calendar year.
I'm really struggling to wrap my head around that. How does a team fundamentally fix their biggest weakness mid-season?
It's incredible.
Is that purely Arne Slot completely changing the training ground routines? Are they hiring specialized set-piece coaches? Or is it just a shift in player mentality and aggression in the box? Because going from dead last to first in 2 months is unprecedented.
It is almost certainly a combination of specialized coaching and a massive shift in tactical application.
Right.
When a team struggles with set pieces, it's usually a systemic failure.
Yeah.
It means the delivery is poor, the timing of the runs is off, or the offensive blocking schemes where players intentionally impede defenders to free up a target man like Virgil van Dijk aren't coordinated.
Yeah.
What Slot has clearly done is strip the set-piece routines down to the studs. He's likely shifted from generic deliveries to highly choreographed routines that exploit the specific weaknesses of the opponent's marking system, whether that's zonal or man-to-man.
Yeah.
In this game, against West Ham, the delivery from Szoboszlai for Van Dijk's goal in the 24th minute was pinpoint, and it clearly exploited a gap in West Ham's defensive organization.
And what I absolutely love about this deep dive is that the fans, the very people paying their hard-earned money to travel to Anfield and watch this team week in and week out, are acutely aware of exactly how they won this game.
They see all.
They aren't blinding themselves to the reality of the performance just because the scoreboard says 5-2. They aren't suffering from confirmation bias. On the Liverpool FC thread, a fan named Kaitek posted an incredibly grounded, almost cynical assessment of their own team's massive victory.
What did they say?
They said, "Hard to complain after a big win, but surely we used up all of our luck in this match." They specifically noted the lower XG than West Ham, calling out the many deflected, scrappy goals, and recognizing that West Ham outfought them for periods and had better possession.
Yeah.
Their TLDR for the match was literally shit football, great set pieces.
Which demonstrates an incredibly high level of football literacy among the fan base. They aren't just cheering for the ball hitting the net. They are analyzing the sustainability of the overall performance.
Right.
It's a phenomenon we could call cognitive dissonance in sports fandom. You are thrilled with the 3 points, but your brain recognizes that relying on massive deflections and set pieces while getting outpossessed at Anfield is absolutely not a recipe for long-term dominance.
Exactly. They know that if they play this exact same way against Manchester City or Arsenal, they'd likely lose. Which transitions us perfectly into looking at the wider sentiment echoing out of Anfield. Because while they are acknowledging the incredible luck and the deflected goals, they are also celebrating some massive, undeniable milestones.
Yeah, let's look at the positives for Liverpool.
This 5-2 win marks the very first time Liverpool has scored 5 goals in a league game all season. You have to go all the way back to when they beat Tottenham in April of the previous season to find the last time they hit 5 in the league.
That's a long drought for a club like Liverpool.
It is. Plus, user SnapJaderDave on Reddit pointed out that this is their first 3 league wins in a row since December, and their first 4 consecutive wins across all competitions. There is real, tangible momentum building here.
There is undeniable momentum, and the relief among the fan base is palpable. When you string 4 wins together across all competitions, the mood in the dressing room transforms.
Yeah.
But what's really striking, and this contrasts so sharply with the pure joy of the result, is how that celebration is heavily tempered with a deep underlying anxiety about the team's overarching style of play.
Right.
If you dig into the comments, you see a fan base actively wrestling with an identity crisis. You have users like Chunky Cat who are deeply unsettled by what they are watching.
What was their take?
They noted that while the team was incredibly clinical with those low-probability shots, it is alarming how we can be attacked so easily and struggle to keep leads. They specifically stated, "We're not showing the control of last season at all."
And that word control is the holy grail in modern elite football, isn't it? It's what Pep Guardiola obsesses over. It's what Mikel Arteta has built at Arsenal.
Yes, 100%.
And that perceived lack of control has sparked this massive, fascinating debate in the Reddit thread pitting their current manager, Arne Slot, against the legendary shadow of Jurgen Klopp.
The ghost of Klopp is always going to linger.
Always. User Southern Emphasis 29 posted about watching a Leeds versus Manchester City game, and they were getting incredibly nostalgic. They said Leeds were playing fast-flowing attacking football, similar to what we are used to seeing during Klopp days.
Yeah.
They lamented that Liverpool used to be fast, direct, and comfortable with the ball, constantly pressing and overwhelming opponents. But in their words, now we are not. They acknowledge the good win today, but you can feel the heavy but still hanging over their comment.
It is the eternal, agonizing struggle of succeeding a legendary, culture-defining manager. Klopp's heavy metal football, the ultra-high-intensity counter-pressing, the emotional electricity is fundamentally ingrained in the DNA of that stadium and that fan base.
Totally.
But then you have the counter-argument, which represents the more pragmatic, data-driven side of the supporters. A user named Alicard661 replied to that Klopp nostalgia with a very sharp analytical observation.
Oh, I saw this one.
They argued that those highly emotional, high-intensity Klopp teams often lost steam or completely broke down physically at the end of the season due to exhaustion. The physical toll of that style is immense. They suggested that if Klopp had incorporated a bit more of Arne Slot's pragmatic, perhaps slightly slower, possession-based tactics, Liverpool might have actually won more than one Premier League title during his tenure.
Wow. Okay. That is an incredibly spicy take for a Liverpool forum.
Very spicy.
To essentially say that Klopp's greatest strength was also his fatal flaw. But you can absolutely see why it resonates. It's the classic debate between aesthetics and results.
Exactly.
Another user, Everything Dislikes Me, jumped in to say that nuance is seemingly dead. They pointed out that while Slot absolutely deserves criticism for the bad stretch of games they had earlier in the winter, the fact that they are clicking again and scoring 5 goals doesn't make him immune to critique, nor is he solely to blame for all their defensive problems.
Right.
It's a fan base desperately trying to find equilibrium in a post-Klopp world.
And part of finding that equilibrium is celebrating the individual players who are carrying the team through this tactical transitional phase. While the collective system might feel shaky, and the underlying data might suggest they were lucky, the individual brilliance is still shining through brightly.
Exactly. And no one is shining brighter right now than Hugo Ekitike. He was the BBC's player of the match with a massive 8.03 rating, scoring his 16th goal of the season just 5 minutes into the game.
That near-post finish we talked about.
Yeah. On Reddit, user Wasam1 didn't hold back at all, boldly declaring that Hugo Ekitike has been the best signing of the season in the whole league.
I praise.
And then there is Cody Gakpo. Gakpo scored that 70th minute deflected goal to make it 4-1, and you could see it clearly meant the world to him. User Sprague defended him passionately online, saying that even if you think he isn't playing well overall this season, you cannot see the raw emotion and meaning behind that goal and still hate the guy. And let's not forget Alexis McAllister. User Tatiana expressed pure joy for him, noting he hasn't been at his absolute best recently, but is still finding ways to make a massive impact, reminding everyone of his vital winner against Real Madrid earlier in the year. They ended their analysis simply with, "Love that man."
So if we synthesize all of that, for Liverpool, it is a truly weird, complex mix of statistical anomalies, deep tactical anxiety, and brilliant individual heroics.
Yeah.
They are winning, they're scoring 5 goals, but they aren't totally convinced by how they are winning. They're celebrating the attacking output while side-eyeing the XG.
Because, again, we are focusing specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric while West Ham felt their performance deserved more. Focus specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric while West Ham felt their performance deserved more.
Right. And now we need to completely pivot and contrast that with the incredibly grim situation developing in the away dressing room.
Let's do it.
While Liverpool fans are debating the philosophical aesthetics of football versus results, West Ham fans are debating their sheer survival as a professional football club.
The crisis for the Hammers is profound, and it is terrifying. Let's look at the defensive breakdown first, because this is where the contrast between Liverpool's attacking output and West Ham's fan analysis really crystallizes.
Okay.
Even though West Ham scored twice, dominated possession, and looked occasionally threatening going forward, they were brutally exposed at the back. The fans felt their performance deserved more, but they were also incredibly harsh on individual defensive lapses.
Yeah.
Alhaji Malik Diouf is the perfect microcosm of this entire situation. He provided a genuinely delightful assist to Tomasz Souček for West Ham's first goal in the 49th minute. He got a tangible attacking contribution on the board.
Right.
But on Reddit, the fans completely ripped him apart. User Pepsi Racer 4 noted that while Diouf was okay going forward, he was, as usual, a liability in defense.
Which perfectly highlights the cruel reality of how modern fullbacks are judged.
It does.
You can provide all the attacking thrust in the world, but when the defensive structure collapses around you and you concede 5, you are going to carry the blame. It also highlights a much wider structural issue for West Ham.
That's that.
When a team is fighting a relegation battle, defensive solidity is the absolute bedrock of survival. If you are conceding 5 goals, even if we acknowledge that 4 of them involved wild deflections, it suggests a team that is fundamentally inviting too much pressure, failing to clear their lines effectively, and allowing the opposition far too much time in dangerous areas.
So the deflections aren't entirely bad luck then.
Well, the BBC stats show Liverpool had 35 touches inside the West Ham box. You simply cannot allow a team of Liverpool's attacking quality that much sustained access to your penalty area and rely on your goalkeeper to constantly bail you out. The deflections happened because the ball was constantly being fired into a crowded box.
And the frustration isn't just aimed at the defense. This is where we need to dive deep into the psychology of a fan base in crisis, the intense, almost vitriolic fan criticism directed at their star forward, Jarrod Bowen.
Yeah, this is really interesting to read.
Bowen actually got the assist on Tati Castellanos' goal in the 75th minute. Now, usually an attacking player getting an assist in a 5-2 away loss against a Big Six club gets a bit of a pass. Fans usually say, well, at least he tried.
Right.
Not Bowen. The fans are absolutely furious with his performance. Why does a fan base turn on their talisman so aggressively when the underlying stats suggest the team actually played decently?
Because the talisman carries the emotional weight of the club.
Yeah.
It tells us everything we need to know about the massive expectations placed on him and how far he has fallen short of those expectations recently.
Okay.
In sports psychology, we often see a variation of the sunk cost fallacy applied to star players. The club has invested heavily in him, the fans have invested all their emotional capital in him, and when a relegation battle looms, they expect him to single-handedly pull them out of the fire. When he doesn't, the betrayal feels deeply personal.
That makes total sense. User accounter 88887 made a brutally dark joke on the subreddit, saying they were now fully convinced Bowen must have placed a very large bet on us going down.
Oh.
They specifically pointed out a very telling moment in the match where Bowen selfishly took the ball onto his left foot, trying to force a shot, and completely ignored a wide-open Adama Traoré who was in a much better position.
Right.
That kind of body language, that desperation to be the hero at the expense of the team, is exactly what infuriates fans. Another user, Acceptable Garbage 294, flat out called Bowen horrendous today and actively demanded he be benched.
Yeah.
And Tartufo Hunter chimed in to say he's been terrible for a few games now. We're talking about their talisman, the guy who famously scored the winning goal for them in a European final not that long ago, and the fan base is ready to drop him entirely.
When the talisman is misfiring, the entire attacking ecosystem suffers. It breeds resentment on the pitch and in the stands. But to be fair to the West Ham supporters, they weren't just scapegoating Bowen. They were looking at a much wider attacking malaise across their entire squad. They were asking the really tough existential question. In a game where our underlying metrics, our XG, and our possession say we played well, who actually turned up and physically fought for the shirt?
And the list of players who did show up, according to the fans, was remarkably short. User Pepsi Racer 4 explicitly listed them out. They said Disasi, Somerville, Fernandez, Souček, and Tati Castellanos.
That's a short list.
They said those were the only ones who seemed like they bothered turning up today. User Nobis backed this up with a scathing indictment stating that pretty much every one of their big players, bar Mateus Fernandez, didn't show up.
Right.
They added that so many of the boys were wank today, and it was hard to even pick the worst of the lot. That is the sound of a fan base that feels fundamentally betrayed by the effort levels of their highest paid stars.
It creates an almost impossible toxic situation for the manager, Nuno Espirito Santo. The psychology of managing a team in this specific contradictory scenario is fascinating.
How so?
Look at his post-match comments to the BBC. He openly admitted to the press that it sounds absurd and silly to call a 5-2 loss a good performance. He knows exactly how ridiculous it sounds to the media and the furious fans. Yet he stubbornly insisted there were a lot of positives, noting that they really just made mistakes from set pieces and suffered from deflections.
I have to challenge that approach, though. Doesn't feeding them statistical silver linings after a 5-2 humiliation risk making the manager look completely delusional to the dressing room?
It's a risk.
At what point does this kind of beta-driven optimism become utterly toxic? If you are a player and you just got battered by 5 goals and your manager walks in and says, actually, lads, we won the XG battle, aren't you going to tune him out completely?
It is an incredibly dangerous tightrope to walk. If he leans too heavily into the data, he risks alienating the players who feel the emotional sting of the defeat. He risks looking like he's gaslighting them.
Exactly.
But as a manager fighting relegation, if your team gets battered 5-2, but the underlying data, The XG, the possession, the pass completion, says you actually played reasonably well and executed the tactical plan in open play.
Yeah.
You absolutely cannot go into the dressing room and destroy their confidence.
Right.
You have to cling to the process. You have to tell them, look, the chaotic deflections killed us. The set pieces killed us. But our fundamental open play structure is working. Trust the system. Because if he loses the dressing room's belief in the system right now, they are mathematically doomed.
But the scoreboard doesn't care about the system.
No, it doesn't.
The scoreboard doesn't care about expected goals, and the league table certainly doesn't care if you were unlucky with deflections. Which brings us to the immediate macro-level impact this result has on the Premier League table.
Yeah, let's look at the bigger picture.
We need to look at what this means going forward. For Liverpool, this 5-2 win is a massive, season-defining shot in the arm for their European ambitions.
Absolutely. The victory pushes them up to 48 points, allowing them to instantly leapfrog Chelsea into 5th place in the table.
Yes, and they are now dead level on points with 4th place Manchester United, though United retain a slightly better goal difference.
Right.
More importantly, they're suddenly only 3 points behind Aston Villa, who are sitting in 3rd place with 51 points. This incredible run of form, these 3 consecutive league wins, has completely opened up the possibility of a top 3 finish for Arne Slot's men.
Yeah.
You can see the disbelief among the fans who were calling for his head a few months ago. User-specific Lock4823 joked on Reddit, "We might legit scam 3rd."
It's a funny comment, but it also perfectly reflects that cognitive dissonance we discussed earlier, that feeling that they aren't playing dominant, aesthetically pleasing football, but they are ruthlessly getting the results anyway. It feels like a scam to the fans because it doesn't look like the Klopp-era dominance that they are culturally conditioned to expect from a successful Liverpool side.
Though other fans were very quick to ground them in reality, another user replied to that comment, warning everyone not to dance on graves until we're comfortably top 4 and in a final.
Very sensible.
It's the classic, traumatized football fan defense mechanism. Never hope too much, never celebrate prematurely until it is mathematically secure.
Which is a luxury West Ham fans can only dream of possessing right now.
Every.
If we shift the tone to their current reality, it is profoundly dire.
Diz.
They are stranded in 18th place with just 25 points. They are firmly entrenched in the relegation zone, sitting 2 agonizing points behind 17th place Nottingham Forest, who just suffered a 1-0 loss to Liverpool days earlier. The pressure is completely suffocating.
And the agonizing match day experience for these West Ham fans is just brutal to imagine. I really want to paint this picture for you. Imagine you are a West Ham supporter. You've spent your hard-earned money, traveled all the way up to Anfield on a weekend. You are sitting in the away end, watching your team get absolutely battered by wildly unlucky deflections and set pieces, despite feeling in your bones like your team is playing okay in open play.
Right.
And while all this misery is happening on the pitch right in front of you, you are constantly checking your phone, frantically refreshing the screen because your direct relegation rivals, Burnley, are playing Brentford at the exact same time.
That dual-screen viewing experience is a unique kind of modern sports torture. You are essentially living 2 separate traumas simultaneously.
Pure torture. And it wasn't a quiet game either. On the Harmers thread, fans were giving desperate live updates of the Burnley match right in the middle of their own 5-2 thrashing.
Oh, man.
Users like Admirable Mess 6591 and Type Principle 743 were posting frantically about Burnley having goals disallowed, then equalizing, then ultimately losing 4-3 in a complete chaotic thriller. The emotional whiplash of watching your own team collapse defensively while praying your rivals don't pick up points is just mentally exhausting. User I Glaze Bike Lanes just commented, "Fucking hell, 8 goals in the Burnley game. It was pure chaos across the entire league."
When that chaos finally settles, what is left in the fan base is a potent mix of dark humor and sheer unadulterated panic. The psychological toll of a prolonged relegation battle forces fans into a very weird, self-deprecating headspace just to cope.
You aren't kidding. User Dangerous Win 2592 pointed out the bitter, agonizing irony of the situation, noting that their fierce London rivals Millwall are currently edging closer to automatic promotion from the Championship, while West Ham are edging closer to the drop.
Wow.
They call it a switcheroo they absolutely did not have on their bingo card for the season. But beyond the banter and the dark jokes, there is genuine, terrifying panic about the existential financial future of the club.
And that panic is rooted in very real, very frightening financial data. The BBC report explicitly confirmed that West Ham recently revealed a £104.2 million financial loss for the last year.
That is massive.
Let's be clear. That is a staggering amount of red ink for any club outside the absolute mega elite. The report noted that they will need to sell players this coming summer, even if they miraculously avoid relegation. If they go down, the financial catastrophe multiplies exponentially.
I think we need to pause and really explain this for our global listeners because the concept of relegation in English football is deeply tied to complex financial regulations. The fans in the Reddit thread are terrified.
Right.
User Consistent Menu 4536 asked the question every single fan dreads. They said, with our board, we won't go the Sheffield Wednesday route, right? They are terrified of dropping down and getting stuck in the lower leagues, suffering points deductions, or worse, going into administration.
Yeah.
What does going into administration actually mean, and how do the league's profit and sustainability rules make a £104.2 million loss a potential death sentence?
It's a vital question. In English football, administration essentially means bankruptcy. It happens when a club cannot pay its debts, whether that's to the taxman, to other clubs for transfer installments, or simply paying the players' wages.
Right.
When a club enters administration, financial experts are brought in to aggressively restructure the debt, which usually means a mandatory fire sale of all valuable assets, meaning the best players are sold for pennies on the dollar.
Wow.
Crucially, entering administration triggers an automatic points deduction from the league, which usually ensures the club gets relegated again, creating a devastating downward spiral. The EFL's Profit and Sustainability Rules, or PSR, strictly limit how much money a club can lose over a 3-year period.
Okay.
If West Ham are relegated into the Championship with massive Premier League wages still on their books and a £104.2 million loss already recorded, they would almost certainly breach those financial rules, leading to immediate points deductions in the lower league.
Which completely validates the sheer terror in the fan base. User Atur tried to inject some logical realism into that panic. They noted that it would take something truly unforeseen to sink the club into full-blown administration because, despite the growing debt, West Ham still has assets to sell, unlike Sheffield Wednesday at the time of their collapse.
That's a fair point.
However, they delivered a very sobering reality check to anyone trying to find a silver lining. If they are relegated, the squad will be completely gutted to cover those £104.2 million losses. The replacements will be few and cheap.
Yeah.
Anyone romanticizing relegation as a fun way to reset the culture, play easier teams, and bounce right back up is in for a nasty surprise. The Championship is a relentless, physical meat grinder of a league, and a financially crippled West Ham would be fresh meat.
Precisely. The stakes couldn't be higher.
So what does this all mean? To quickly recap this incredible deep dive for you, the listener, we just unpacked a completely chaotic 5-2 scoreline that effectively masked a much, much closer game statistically.
Yeah.
We explored Liverpool's insane mathematical anomaly of maximizing a low 1.75. Expected goals tally through a barrage of wild, unpredictable deflections and the lethal execution of highly choreographed set pieces, turning their biggest weakness from last year into their greatest strength.
Right.
And most importantly, we witnessed the wildly contrasting emotional states of two massive clubs. We saw a Liverpool team pushing for the heights of the Champions League while actively wrestling with their tactical identity and lack of control under Arne Slot.
And we contrasted that with a West Ham team staring straight into the terrifying financial abyss of the Championship, feeling utterly abandoned by their star players like Jared Bowen, despite the underlying data suggesting they played well enough to deserve more.
Exactly. Focus specifically on how Liverpool's 5 goals defied the lower expected goals metric, while West Ham felt their performance deserved more.
It is a remarkable narrative, full of contradictions, and it leaves us with one final, deeply fascinating paradox to chew on before we go.
Ooh, let's hear it.
This raises a highly important question about how we fundamentally analyze the game of football. According to the BBC's pre-match data, coming into this specific fixture, West Ham had scored 59% of all their goals this season in the first half. That was the highest share of first-half goals in the entire division.
Okay.
Liverpool, conversely, had scored the absolutely lowest share of their goals in the first half, just 31%. Furthermore, Liverpool hadn't scored a single goal before the 41st minute at Anfield since December 13th.
They were notoriously slow starters. They needed halftime to figure things out.
Exactly. Every single piece of season-long statistical evidence, every model, suggested that West Ham would start fast and Liverpool would slowly grow into the game late.
Right.
Yet in this match, The exact polar opposite happened. Liverpool scored not one, not two, but three times by the 43rd minute, effectively ending the contest before the halftime whistle even blew.
That's great.
So, the thought I want to leave you to ponder is this. When two highly structured professional teams completely abandon their season-long statistical identities in the span of just 35 minutes, is tactical analysis and data actually predicting the future? Or are we all just trying to find comforting patterns in a fundamentally chaotic sport?
Oh, I absolutely love that. Are we the masters of the data, or is the data just a psychological coping mechanism for the sheer chaos of 22 people running around on grass? What a fantastic question to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the numbers behind the narratives, keep looking for the hidden stories in the stats, and we will catch you on the next one.